Welcome to Prism of Torah with Rabbi Asaf Aaron Prisman, engaging Divrei Torah, packed with stories and practical insights. Find us wherever you get your podcasts or at prismoftorah.org.
Shalom Uvracha. In this week's Parshat Mishpatim, we know the Torah tells us all kinds of laws to do with monetary laws, a person and his fellow Jew, and all these types of laws. What's interesting is that the Parsha starts off with the word ve'ele hamishpatim, and these are the laws that you shall place before them. Rashi notes something that's alarming. Why does it have the prefix ve'ele, and these laws? And he brings down the Midrash Rabbah that says, these laws were connected them to the laws we said in last Parsha, Parshas Yisroi, which over there we were talking about the 10 Commandments. And we learn from here, the Midrash says, that these laws are just like the laws of the 10 Commandments. Just like they were given at Har Sinai, so too these civil laws were also given at Sinai. But the question begs itself, isn't it obvious? We know the Torah was given to us at Sinai, at Har Sinai. It's not just common sense, but there's a famous drasha in Parshas Behar, in Vayikra, Perek Kaf Pasuk Aleph. The Torah says that the laws of Shemitah were given in Har Sinai. And Rashi asks the question, the very well-known question, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai? What does Shemitah have to do with Har Sinai? And he answers, just like Shemitah was given with all its principles and all the details in Har Sinai, so too all the mitzvahs were given there with all their details. And the question is, if we already know from this drasha with Shemitah that everything was given at Har Sinai, why does the Torah have to waste this word, ve'ele, the vav, the prefix, and these are the laws to teach us the same thing, that all these civil laws were also given in Sinai. They're already part of the whole Torah. Why do we have to add ve'ele to say and these? Rav Yitzchak Huttner in Parshat Yitzchak says an unbelievable concept. And he says the following: we might assume that religion primarily involves our relationship with Hashem, which is tefillah, praying, believing in Hashem. But civil laws, like returning a lost object or paying damages, that logically makes a lot of sense for a society to be able to function properly. That's simply good citizenship. The Sfas Emes kicks it up a notch, and he says that even the fact that the Torah's civil laws actually appear to us rational is only because Hashem wanted it this way. We can't take it for granted that Mishpatim, these civil laws, come in sensible form. That itself is a gift. And hence, this is precisely where the danger appears. Because things that seem to us logical, a person can forget that they're divine laws, divine decrees that come from Hashem. With Shemitah, no one can make that mistake. With Parah Aduma, no one can make that mistake. Because the law is clearly supernatural. And that's exactly why Shemitah was a good teacher, to teach us that all the mitzvahs should be looked upon exactly like Shemitah, and they're all given in Sinai, even the ones that make a lot of sense to us, rationally speaking. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. He created the blueprint of the world, which is the Torah. He looked in the Torah and then created the world. Only Hashem understands exactly what everything is about and the root for everything. We can't try to use our own logic to figure out what to do. And there's a danger that we will do that and not realize everything came from Hashem, especially with these laws that make logical sense to us. The Bartenura makes this point regarding Pirkei Avot. We know the Pirkei Avot is known to be the famous Mishnayos that teach us how to live life, how to perfect our middot, our character traits, etc. And hence, it's very troubling that the first Mishnah starts about the historical passing over of the laws of the Torah from Sinai to Moshe Rabbeinu, etc. Why is it there? It seems to be not the correct place for it. And he explains that since Pirkei Avot deals entirely with ethics and character traits, and since the nations of the world also have such books of ethics according to their own logic, one can easily make the mistake and think these teachings are only from wise human, but that it doesn't come from Hashem. Therefore, the Mishnah emphasizes, no, Moshe received the Torah from Sinai, including all these principles, even the middot. Rav Huttner finds another hint that supports this idea. Moshe took half the blood and placed it in basins, and half the blood he sprinkled upon the Mizbeach, the altar. Rashi asked, who divided the blood exactly in half? An angel. But why couldn't Moshe simply pour roughly equal amounts into 2 cups? And the answer is because human beings cannot measure with absolute precision. Only angels can do that. The blood on the Mizbeach represented mitzvahs ben Adam lamakom, mitzvahs between us and Hashem. The blood sprinkled on the people represented mitzvahs ben Adam lechaveru, between a Jew and his fellow Jew. These 2 halves had to be exactly equal because these 2 components of Torah are exactly equal in importance. And this is what the Torah is teaching us. And that's what our Parsha is saying, Ve'ele hamishpatim. Also these that seem to be logically ethical and make sense, they are also equally important together with the mitzvahs between us and Hashem. There are those who excel in the mitzvahs ben Adam lamakom, meticulously about Shabbos, davening, kashrus, yet treat monetary laws and proper speech as secondary, as if that's second-class mitzvah, because it's common sense. But there are also those who make the opposite mistake. They pride themselves on being good people, ethical, kind, honest. However, they treat ritual observance as less important, as if it's all about being a mensch, being a good person, which is true, it's important, but you cannot neglect the other half of Ben Adam Lamakum. Both these mistakes stem from the same root, forgetting that the entire Torah is from Sinai, not this half and not that half. That's exactly what Rav Huttner is saying, that the blood was divided exactly in half, not a drop more here and not a drop more there. The bottom line is that in every situation we are faced with, we have to follow the Torah. Hashem created the blueprint of this world, which was through the Torah, and the next world, the world to come, knows what is truly right and how we should behave in every situation. We follow His commands not because they make sense to us, but because Hashem commanded us and He knows what's best. Rav Huttner adds another brilliant observation. If you look carefully, every time it says the words luchot sabris in the Torah, it says the word luchot without the vav, meaning in ktiv chaser, spelt as if it was read the way it was spelt, it would be luchat, singular, 1 tablet, not 2. And that's to hint the same idea. That even though indeed there are 2 sets of laws, one set between man and Hashem and one between man and the fellow Jew, they are in essence one. We cannot forget that even though Chazal sometimes tell us a taste, tam of the mitzvah, it's only a taste. We can never forget that. We can't really understand the root of what the mitzvah is all about, but we can connect it as much as we can. And that's why it was such a huge thing that Klal Yisrael at Har Sinai said, we'll do, and then we'll try to understand as much as we can. That's naaseh, we'll do, v'nishma. V'nishma, the deeper understanding of the word nishma is not just listen, but it's trying to connect it as much as we can. First we commit and we do, and then we try to understand as much as we can, but we have to realize we'll never, at least in this world, understand the true root of what every mitzvah is about. Before the story, I will end with what the Chasam Sofer said. I am worried much more about sins ben Adam lechaveru than ben Adam lamakom. I trust Hashem's forgiveness, but I cannot be sure about people. We have to know that the reverse is also equally true. Neglecting Shabbos or Tefillah while priding ourselves on ethics also misses the point. We should always ask ourselves, which half of luchot sabris do I tend to neglect? Because we have to remember, at the end of the day, they are 1 tablet. I want to end with this incredible story that I heard by Shem Rav Landau. There was once, several years ago, around 5 years ago, a religious band in Israel was booked for a wedding at a familiar hall. When they arrived and began setting up, they realized there had been a terrible misunderstanding. No mechitza, immodest dressing, mixed dancing. The band leader approached the couple and explained that he's so sorry and he feels really awful, but his band simply could not perform under these conditions. The bride and groom were furious. A man stepped forward. I am an attorney. You signed the contract. Under Israeli law, if you walk away, the penalty is for sure $10,000. There is legal precedent here. The band leader looked at him and said, $10,000 is a tremendous amount of money for me, but it is a small price to keep what is right. He packed up the equipment and left. Within days, the official notice arrived. He paid the penalty from his own pocket. 2 or 3 years later, he received an unusual request. A couple wanted his band for their son's pidyon haben. When he arrived, a man in a kippah and tzitzis approached him with a woman whose hair was covered. "Do you recognize us?" He said, "No, not at all. We are the bride and groom from that wedding. When you walked away, knowingly that you would have to pay $10,000, we could not believe it. We had never met anyone willing to take such a financial hit for what they believed is right. We grew up in northern Tel Aviv with no exposure to religious Jews, but a person whose entire life was governed by something higher than convenience or money, that we couldn't believe. That had a major impact on us. As a result, we looked into things and we enrolled into a seminar. Today, we are fully observant Jews. Before the evening ended, they handed him an envelope, the payment for the event plus $10,000. The note said, Your decision to pay that fine changed our lives." Have a good Shabbos.
This concludes another episode of the Prism of Torah. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and give a 5-star rating. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts or our own website, prismoftorah.com, where we have a full archive of all our past episodes. We would like to thank Yona Vefa for the recording equipment and Eli Podcast Productions for handling all our post-podcast productions. Join us next week for another enlightening conversation on the Prism of Torah.